And now, Pat Goss.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Goss's Garage. I'm Pat Goss. If you would like to talk about anything at all that deals with automobiles or something with an engine in it, especially today, if you want to talk about Harley-Davidson motorcycles, we have Lyndon Abell, General Manager of Rommel Harley-Davidson in Annapolis, here with us. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Pat.
Absolutely. All right, what is going on in the world of motorcycles?
Well, lots is going on in the world of motorcycles. It's that time of year, you know. Summer's time for riding. I think all time is the time for riding, but summer is certainly when most people choose to ride. And June 19th is Ride to Work Day. This has been going on for a couple of decades now. And it's an interesting way to remind people about the benefits of riding motorcycles. For those car drivers out there who have no interest in motorcycles, and that's okay. You don't know what you're missing, but that's okay. But some of them sort of feel like those pesky motorcycles are in the way, and I'm not talking about the guys who are just sort of obnoxious and crazy. There's car drivers like that too. I'm talking about regular motorcycles. But here's the benefit, not just to motorcycle riders, but to everybody if you ride your motorcycle to work. So envision a world in which 10% of the cars were removed from the roadway and turned into motorcycles. Traffic, as we know it, would probably vaporize, right?
Oh, yeah, all these traffic jams and everything.
I mean, motorcycles take up a fraction of the space of cars. Parking, right? When you get to work and there's no parking spaces, there's parking spaces because you can fit several motorcycles into the space of one car. Which, by the way, is a good reason to talk to those municipalities that think you should only have one vehicle per parking space. That's a ridiculous rule. If you can fit 4 motorcycles in there, they should use them. And also, wear and tear on the roadways, right? Construction delays are the things that probably slow us down the most. At least they seem to be, highest on my radar.
Yeah.
And that damage is caused by wear and tear on the roadways, which is largely weight, right? And if you get rid of that, if you dramatically reduce the weight, and let's face it, a motorcycle weighs a fraction of what a car does, you dramatically reduce the wear and tear on the roadway. So I realize that for some people, one motorcycle might simply be a drop in the bucket, but a lot of drops will fill a bucket.
That's true.
Yeah. And so anyway, June 19th, Ride to Work Day. If you're a motorcycle rider, do yourself, your planet, and your fellow car drivers a favor and ride your motorcycle to work instead of driving a car. And you might be amazed at what a better mood you arrive in, right? And also riding home, you get home in a better mood. At least that's the case for me. And if we got more people doing that, we would reduce traffic, we would reduce pollution, we would reduce gasoline used, we would reduce construction repairs required, and a whole lot of other stuff.
Good points, all.
So, who knew? Motorcycles, good for the world.
Well, we're one of the most backward countries when it comes to motorcycles.
Right. Every place else on the planet, they get that.
Yeah.
Right? We have to convince Americans of that. But we were a car culture. I mean, the cars, the first car may not have been invented here, but we, certainly mass-produced them and turned them into a thing. And we built our infrastructure around car traffic, where lots of other countries were obviously not, they had infrastructure that was built around different kinds of transportation. And it was actually inherently less efficient for cars, but when you get a lot of congestion and they support the use of two-wheel transportation, motorized or non-motorized, and more pedestrian friendly and things like that, suddenly they seem a little more attractive in an urban environment.
It's interesting how my perspective on cars has changed over the years. Years ago, all I wanted was to have something super, super special as far as a car goes. And now, because of traffic and one thing and another, my car has become a nice, very, very nice appliance.
Right.
And my motorcycle is where my lust goes.
Yeah. I did the same transformation a long time ago. I like nice cars. I love looking at nice cars, but when it's time to drive something, I typically choose the attractive, nice appliance, it needs to be able to, weather the abuse that's out there and have proper air conditioning and do what I need it to do. And the motorcycle is where I'm really looking for something that's fun and special. In fact, I have a couple of fun cars, but when it comes right down to it, when the weather's bad, I don't want to take them, and when the weather's good, I'd rather take a motorcycle.
Yeah, and I suppose perhaps if I lived in a different part of the country or something, maybe my perspectives would be different. But, there's so little other than appliance-like things that you can do with a car in an area like the Washington metropolitan area.
Well, I think that's true, but I would still submit that even if I lived in a rural, the rural mountains of North Carolina, I would still say, well, great weather for a fun car, but motorcycle's
Bike's
even
better. Right, for sure.
And that's not to take anything away from a car, but there was a time when I was pretty young. I thought, I somehow got it in my head that motorcycles were only for, young people, and I was becoming an adult and I should just get a fun car. And I had a transition in motorcycles. Motorcycle was out of my life, and instead of getting a new bike when I moved to a place where I had the space to get it, I bought a fun car, an old British sports car, and it was great. Loved it, and I thought of it as my motorcycle. And then I got another motorcycle, and I said, "Yeah, this
Right,
is way better."
Exactly. Well, is that the same British sports car that you?
Yes, sir. I still have
The Triumph.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. How's that doing?
It's doing great. It doesn't get flogged a lot, but that there's a lot of. I think British sports cars get a little bit of an extra bad reputation that they don't necessarily deserve. They really, like a lot of older things, if you maintain them properly and you fix them properly instead of doing it with spit and baling twine, they actually work quite well and they're pretty serviceable.
Yeah, well, one of the reputations about Lucas, the Prince of Darkness, for
Right.
the electricals and so on. And I have worked on a lot of British cars over the years, and like you say, do it right, and there's no problem. And they're really, if you look at them today, and you look at a comparable aged domestic car, Chevrolet or something like that, chances are the wiring in the domestic car is going to be worse than the wiring in the British car.
Well, you know more about that stuff than I do, but I will say that that car was new to me. I bought it. I was the second owner, and it had a lot of electrical problems. But as I got into it, I found that most of those electrical problems were the result of things being added with Scotch locks. Somebody had a CB radio on it at some point. They installed the driving lights in a sloppy manner at the dealership. There was a lot of things that were done poorly, and I found, once I realized where those problems were and I corrected each of those problems and had proper connections, and then a couple of extra fuses. They were a little chintzy on their fused circuits. Right. That was the end of the problems. I had a regular problem with the switch, which I thought was a result of how poorly the switch was designed. But then I realized the wiring to the switch was run improperly, and once that was corrected, no more switch problems. So there was a lot of things like that I think were the cause of, just like the hairy homeowner plumbing fixes.
Yeah.
There's things that a professional knows how to do right, and no disrespect to somebody that wants to do their own maintenance, but if you want to do your own maintenance, just like the seminars we give about motorcycles and the things you talk about with cars, you have to know what you're doing, and if you don't blame the car.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we see on domestic cars in particular is where corrosion comes into the wire and will go from the taillight all the way to the fuse panel. So if you open up the wire, and not just look at the end of it or something like that, you open up the wire, it will be green from the taillight all the way to the fuse box.
Which increases resistance and does all sorts of things.
Right. So, folks, we need to take a break. We'll be right back on Goss's Garage.
Stay tuned. Pat will take your calls next at 844-885-4677. Goss's Garage continues in a moment.
How quickly we forget. We're right back to using short-term logic to make long-term purchases. There's a huge increase in sales of big, thirsty vehicles. Trucks, SUVs, and other vehicles with dismal gas mileage are selling like hotcakes. Yes, they're wonderful, but can your budget support such a thirsty beast when gas prices go back to $4 a gallon? Did you plan on that? On the plus side, if you're considering a thrifty car, you might get a real deal. With so many drivers ignoring reality, there are more hybrid and plug-ins in stock. Traditionally, hybrids have not been a great deal because when gas prices are sky high, everyone wants one, which pushes their prices up, sometimes so high that you might have to pay over window sticker to get a hybrid or a plug-in. But higher purchase prices mean it can take years to break even through savings at the pump. It has taken many drivers so long to break even that trade-in time came before they broke even. But cheaper gas zaps hybrid demand, and less demand can mean a better deal. So if you've been thinking about an economy car, now might be the time. That's using long-term logic to buy a long-term product. That's smart. Life changes at a ferocious pace these days, especially when it comes to maintaining our cars. For example, automatic transmissions now need regular fluid flushes. Transmission fluid breaks down with use, and although it may look fine, its additives wear out and it can no longer properly protect bands, clutches, seals, and other hugely expensive parts inside your transmission. Bottom line, more wear and a shorter transmission life. Now you can significantly extend transmission life with a BG transmission flush every 24 to 30,000 miles or 2 years. BG makes the best transmission flush machine I've ever tested. It renews all of the fluid in your transmission, not just a small part of it. The BG transmission flush machine is safe too because it uses the natural circulation of the transmission. Your transmission will work better and last longer. As with everything BG offers, this is a superior service. For more information, go to bgprod.com or bgfindashop.com.
This is Goss's Garage with Pat Goss. Call the show now at 844-885-4677.
This portion of Goss's Garage is brought to you by BG Products. Now, in the studio with me this morning, we have Lyndon Abell. Lyndon, as you know, is the general manager of Rommel Harley-Davidson in Annapolis, Maryland. And if you have a question for him, 844-885-4677. He would love to talk to you just as I would. All right, what else happening motorcycle-wise?
Well, at Rommel Harley-Davidson in Annapolis, we are having our second annual Antique Bike Show, which is June 24th, Saturday, June 24th. We're going to have the Nighthawks playing. We're going to have the Chesapeake Suns playing. So we got two bands trying to stretch it out a little bit longer. Also, the Porsche dealership, which is next door to us, is participating and inviting some classic Porsches to come in and be displayed on their lot. So, you know, we can sort of cross over each other's lawns, if you will. And there will be, last year, I think we had, our first year, right? I think we had 35 antique bikes. The oldest was a 1903. It was not a Harley-Davidson. And it was not much more than a bicycle with a piece of a motor that didn't run. But it's a remarkable piece of hardware to see if you're interested in mechanical things and how they work. One of the interesting things about antique motorcycles is that you can really get a view into it. You know, today, if you open a car hood today, you really can't see anything.
Oh yeah, that's for sure.
And even on a motorcycle where the Harley-Davidson, the motor is really sort of the jewelry, there are covers to cover things up. In earlier days, you saw exposed valve train components and things like that. Now that's not good for longevity and not necessarily reliability,
Right.
but it is kind of cool to see. And these certainly aren't the kind of bikes that most people would want to, take on a 2,000-mile road trip. But for the most part, I think all but one or two were running, and some of them beautifully restored and capable of running as well as they did when they were new.
Gee, it won't be too many more years, and mine will be an antique.
Yeah, there's some confusion about that. We had a guy show up with a mid-90s Evo Evolution-powered Harley-Davidson, and I guess, a few of his friends had gone, well, man, that's an antique. So he showed up for the show, and it was our first time, so we didn't have all of our organization ready. We hadn't communicated effectively, so he stayed, but it was a little bit of a,
right.
It looked weird, right? So we just specified this year that it's shovel head and earlier. Now, other model antique motorcycles will be certainly welcome, especially if space permits. But I think probably the majority that we will see are Harley-Davidson and the real Indians.
Real Indians, yes. And,
not the Polarises.
A clone, not an effective clone.
Yeah, I mean, Indian went out of business a long time ago, and I think there's some confusion with that. But there are a lot of very nice, Springfield, Massachusetts made Indians that are still on the road. And
they were quite a bike in their day, I take it.
Oh yeah, sure. And there was a lot of competition between Harley-Davidson and Indian, and it was probably good for the American motorcycle scene. There's another really special motorcycle that I hope to see there, which is a Crocker. And,
ooh.
Yeah, so you're familiar with that.
Oh, yeah.
It was a very high-end, sport-oriented motorcycle in the 20s and 30s. I'm not sure when they started, maybe mid-teens, late teens, and probably went out of business somewhere in the mid-30s. I don't know their history as well as I should, but it was a really well-designed and very fast for its day motorcycle.
Yeah, well, wasn't it a 100-mile-an-hour bike in a period of 50 and 60-mile-an-hour bikes?
Absolutely. And my friend Mark Wenner, who is the lead singer and founding member of the Nighthawks, and the Nighthawks will be playing there, he's had a probably 3-year project now, maybe more like 4.5, to get a Crocker back on the road, and it's back on the road, and we were just discussing that the other day, so he hopes to have it there, and we're looking forward to seeing it. I've seen it without the motor a couple of times, but I'm looking forward to seeing it running.
One of the things that interests me, you mentioned a few minutes ago about the open valve trains on some of these older engines. How in the world did that work?
Well, I think they sort of expected them to break, so it was an easy way to get in there and lubricate things. And
so did you carry your oil can and just squirt it along?
Yeah, and also there was a total loss oil system, right? So they were sort of messy, and a little oil would splash around and come up and down on the valve tip and make a little bit of a mess.
And the rest of it was on your pant legs.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's why motorcycle riders wore black, let's face it. Yeah. You're going to get some oil on you.
Okay. And the other thing, of course, is that that's one of the reasons that Harley got the reputation for being leakers, was because of the vent holes in the primaries on some of the older ones that automatically leaked oil.
Well, there was, first of all, in the earlier days, there was a total loss oiling system. So it just went through the motor and then went away, and you replenish the oil similar to replenishing the gasoline. But when they came out with the knucklehead motor in the 30s, that was a recirculating oil system, but it lubricated the chain, both the primary chain and the final drive chain, with the engine oil. So there would just be a little drip that would come out. And on the primary chain, the attempt was to bring it back into the motor, but the primary wasn't super sealed up. It was a tin primary, and heat and time and taking it on and off and dropping it would keep it from being super flat. It wasn't, like today it's an aluminum piece that's machined very flat and frankly has more bolts and better gaskets. Back then it was, it wasn't something that was necessarily tight. But it also wasn't supposed to have a lot of oil in there, and people didn't think it was a big deal. But the chain was lubricated by a drip system that just put oil right onto the chain. So obviously that was going to go away, but they needed a way to keep that lubricated. So the rider, and that was really a convenience. The rider didn't have to pull over and lubricate their chain every 100 miles or so. Just when the motor was running faster, it dripped faster, and when it was running slower, it dripped less.
Yeah, okay.
EPA
Fascinating stuff.
EPA takes a dim view of that these days.
Yeah, right. And for anybody that thinks that Harleys leak as a matter of course, that is long gone.
Yeah, they're a very oil-tight machine, and the standards obviously have changed. The joke was when a Harley didn't have oil underneath it, it was out of oil.
Right.
And the other one was it's not leaking, it's marking its spot. Which I was like, but yeah, today if we see a couple of drips under a Harley, there's sort of panic that, oh my gosh, it's coming apart. But Harley-Davidsons have to be engineered a little better, or the big twins, I should say, in order to be leak-free, because they have some things that are probably built more on tradition than practicality. The separate motor and transmission requires a primary that connects those two. So by doing that, you introduce a connection where it's a little more likely to leak than if you had a unitized construction. British motorcycles moved to a unitized construction in the mid-'60s, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
And that did away with some of the leaking. Improved metallurgy and improved gaskets has, and frankly, using more bolts per inch or per foot,
Right.
has really made the difference. Metal's just better, and the way it's put together, I'm sure the same is true in cars.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we used to have tin valve covers
Right.
that you couldn't stop them from leaking.
Right.
And
Because they
so
weren't
on.
square.
Right.
Right.
And, they were just stamped tin.
Right. And then
And-
you just add more goo to the gasket.
Right. Until you had this mound of
Squishing
Ackenbucky
inside.
sticking
and-
out
right.
everywhere. It was
Yeah, that
pretty-
used to be part of the service procedure too, was put silicone on the unit with the gasket. I mean, you think about that today and you go, what? You would never do that.
Today we have these cast, highly machined covers, and
Right.
we used to have tin oil pans.
Right.
Now they're cast
Cast,
machined
yeah.
aluminum, and the leaks, we just don't see them like we used to
Right.
at all. It's a whole different world.
Yeah, it is better.
Yeah. All right, we need to take another break. More with Lyndon Abell from Rommel Harley-Davidson in Annapolis, coming up right here on Goss's Garage.
Operators are standing by to take your call for Pat at 844-885-4677. Goss's Garage continues in a moment.
Think you'll get a deal buying a used car from an individual instead of a dealer? Possibly, but there's a good chance you'll get taken if you wind up dealing with a curbstoner. Curbstoners are low-life scum who buy cars with problems, cobble them together, roll back the miles, make them look good, and resell them. They usually claim the car belonged to a friend or relative, and there's a sad story about a death, financial woes, illness, or other tragedy. If you buy from one of these crooks, you'll probably get a great-looking car, but in poor mechanical or body condition at a slightly lower price. But you won't get a warranty or a good, reliable car. Curbstoner cars are often so bad they only have scrap value. There are curbstoner cars all over the internet, in nearly every shopping center and sitting along the road. Total loss, flood cars are a curbstoner favorite because there are tens of thousands of them and they're easy to disguise. So, when buying off the street, question everything. When was the title issued? Is it in the seller's name? Does it show the seller's proper address? Is it from another state? Of course, always have a shop check any used car and get a Carfax vehicle history report before paying a dime. Curbstoners are crooks who will happily steal your money. So be really careful. I get lots of questions about BG products, many about specific products or services like, is BG44K really that good, or are BG transmission, cooling system, and power steering flushes actually necessary? But most popular of all, do I use BG products in my cars? Well, the answer to all of those questions is yes. A regular schedule of BG flushes and chemicals will deliver the longest possible life from all the lubricated and fuel delivery parts on your vehicles. And do I use BG products? You bet I do. I drive nice cars, and I drive a lot. Plus, my live radio and TV shows mean that my cars have to be absolutely reliable. A no start from dirty fuel injectors or a failed transmission just isn't acceptable in my life. Remember, deposits and dirty fluids ruin expensive parts. For reliability like I demand, visit one of the quality shops that sell BG products and perform BG services. To find a BG professional near you, bgfindashop.com.
Now, back to Goss's Garage with your host, Pat Goss.
All right, folks, please subscribe to Goss's Garage on YouTube, follow us on Facebook, and for more car tips, tricks, and money-saving ideas, visit goss-garage.com. Now, we are joined on the line by Mr. Michael Woods. He's out at Wings and Wheels, and this is an AOPA event. That's the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. Now, this is going on in Frederick, Maryland, and with that, let's have Michael tell us a little bit about what you would see there. Michael, welcome to Goss's Garage.
Hey, Matt, thanks for having us on. Yeah, we're here at Frederick Municipal Airport, just to the east of Frederick. We have Wings and Wheels going on. It is a combination aircraft, motorcycle, and, of course, classic car show. Right now we have somewhere in the area of 100 classic cars parked on our aviation ramp, and it's intermixed with helicopters and aircraft and some really cool motorcycles.
Well, right here in the studio with me, I have my good friend Lyndon Abell, who is the general manager of Rommel Harley-Davidson in Annapolis. We've been talking about motorcycles, so that's right up his alley.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Good deal, yeah.
All right, so we know where to come. Admission, open to the public, what are the criteria?
It is, the event actually happens from 10 to 2 today, although folks are already starting to show up. It is a free event. We have 8 or 10 food trucks with a variety of food. We have a live band, country band called Six Pack Rodeo. It's going to be a party.
It sounds that way. Planes, what, all small planes, or how does that work?
All of these, as far as I know, everything on the lot this morning are all single-engine aircraft. We have one aircraft that flew around the world, a Beech Bonanza. A number of other aircraft, decathlons, aerobatic aircraft, quite the display.
It sounds that way. And this goes on until what time today?
2 this afternoon.
Till 2 this afternoon. Is there a website or something where people can get information?
Absolutely. Wings and Wheels is, let's go to aopa.org/WNW.
Okay. All right, what else should we know about this? Because it sounds fascinating.
Well, there's also a space for kids. We've got inflatables, we've got balloon artists, we've got face painters. Like I say, there's something here for everyone.
Wonderful. Well, Michael, appreciate your coming on with us this morning, and wish you all the best. Hope it's a great success.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us on.
You bet. Take care. Well, that sounds like an interesting,
It does.
yeah.
Six-pack rodeo. I mean, that's a bucket of fun. I wish I didn't have to go to work.
Yeah, me too. I would head on up that way. Folks, 844-885-4677 if you have a question for myself or for Lyndon. Lyndon can talk about anything dealing with Harleys, that's for sure, motorcycles in general.
Certainly try.
All right, Ride to Work Day.
Yeah, so June 19th is Ride to Work Day, and I brought some stuff to show off some items that make it a little bit easier to ride to work. I think some people just don't think about the possibility of commuting by motorcycle. Obviously, I do that almost all of the time, but I don't. I work at a motorcycle shop, so of course I ride to work. And you know, if you have to transport, you know, a big toolbox to your construction site, riding a motorcycle may not be practical. But for an awful lot of people, office workers or service workers, you know, doctors, lawyers, whatever, you can travel by motorcycle and get there in a better mood and with your gear and so forth. So I brought some items, two things that are great for having. So did I do that? Sorry. So your basic backpack and messenger bag. So these are at any office building you would see, you know, scores of these, right? But what makes these different is that they have attachment points to strap onto your motorcycle. Both of them have an attachment that goes over the backrest and then straps that will secure it to the sissy bar, giving you something that instead of having, you can wear it, right? Just like a regular backpack, but some people are just uncomfortable with that or it makes them a little extra hot and they don't want to do that. So this is a way to strap it onto any motorcycle, well, specifically a Harley-Davidson, of course, that has a backrest on the back and a sissy bar. So good attachment point. Both of them come with specific laptop slots, right? So a nice padded slot for your backpack, for your laptop, and you can clip it into place. A lot of different pockets. The material is waterproof, but the zippers are not. So if you're going to be in a deluge, this actually comes with a waterproof cover that you can put over things to make sure that everything stays dry. But, you know, like a lot of backpacks, it has a headphone port, so you can keep something in here if you're walking. I don't really recommend that on a motorcycle. Both of them have reflective piping to make you more visible when you're riding home at night or if you're going in early. So a couple of great choices to carry your gear if you're choosing to ride to work.
The backpack is essentially an office on your back.
Absolutely, yeah. I use one of those a lot. If I'm riding to work with something with saddlebags, which is more often than not, I don't use that. I use it on work travel, but if I'm riding one of my motorcycles that doesn't have saddlebags, I just throw that on my back or throw it on the backrest. I carry an iPad in there. I have a laptop at work, but it's, in the old days before I had an iPad, my laptop went in there, and you can carry a lot of gear. I do a 2-day business trip and don't bring anything but that.
Yeah,
it's pretty spacious.
Impressive piece of equipment.
And we also have, down here on the ground, this is a kind of jacket, and there's a lot of these available through Harley-Davidson, but I just brought one example. This is a jacket that is waterproof. The fabric is waterproof, and some of the zippers are waterproof. But to make sure that nothing leaks through, it also has a waterproof liner to make sure that you're fully waterproof. That is removable, as are these panels that allow this jacket to convert from a standard jacket that's going to keep you warm when the weather is cool and dry when the weather is wet. This thing will come off
Oh my goodness.
turn into a mesh jacket, which will allow the breeze to just come right through you. So you don't have much more on that's blocking the wind from cooling you off than a long sleeve t-shirt. But if you need protection, you have a substantial amount of protection. And of course, it accepts the Harley-Davidson armor in both the shoulders and the elbow area.
So the really important spots.
Yeah, and if you're going to have a little tip over, even just a slow one, that's generally where you put something down, and it's nice to have some extra padding there. So this is a great jacket. It's not going to top leather as protection, but the best leather jacket in the world doesn't work if it's in your closet.
Yeah. Now, are you seeing a trend of people moving away from leather, or is it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's textiles are a lot more flexible. There's a lot more choices in textiles than there were, even 7 or 8 years ago. And I think that there's been good, effective marketing for that. Some people just aren't crazy about leather because it's heavy.
Mm-hmm.
In my experience, women in particular sort of shy away from the traditional heavy leather jacket and prefer something that's lighter, but they're not alone. There's lots of guys that pick up a heavy leather jacket and go, oh, that's too heavy. That's never bothered me, and you will never top the protection of leather. For anybody that has read things that says that Kevlar is stronger than steel, or that it's, these type of textiles have better abrasion resistance than leather, that comes with a little bit of a caveat. The type of abrasion that you get from sliding along the pavement, it may be as tough as leather per foot, but you tend to slide further, so you need a little bit more. But regardless, this is an excellent choice for somebody that is looking for something that can be a lower price point, protect against wetness and abrasion and cold, and do it all in one garment.
Well, the wetness would appeal to me because my leather is anything but waterproof.
Yeah, there are treatments. I have several leather jackets, as you know, and I put some things on them that help make it much more water resistant. So I'll stay dry in a sprinkle or in a short ride when it's wet, but if it really starts coming down, they get saturated. Harley-Davidson does have a really special jacket that has a lot of the same characteristics of this, but is made of leather. It's their FXRG line, and that leather has a special treatment on it that allows it to be waterproof. And then same idea, the zippers are where it's going to leak. The smaller zippers with less stress are waterproof. The main zipper is backed by a waterproof panel. And that's really, the top of the line Swiss Army knife of jackets, if you will. But it comes at a higher price point, and it's heavy. So some people that prefer something lighter and don't want to spend that kind of money have an alternative.
Okay. All right, folks, we need to take a break. More with Lyndon Abell from Rommel Harley-Davidson in Annapolis coming up right here on Goss's Garage.
Stay tuned. Pat will take your calls next at 844-885-4677. That's 844-885-GOSS. Goss's Garage continues in a moment.
Life changes at a ferocious pace these days, especially when it comes to maintaining our cars. For example, automatic transmissions now need regular fluid flushes. Transmission fluid breaks down with use, and although it may look fine, its additives wear out and it can no longer properly protect bands, clutches, seals, and other hugely expensive parts inside your transmission. Bottom line, more wear and a shorter transmission life. Now you can significantly extend transmission life with a BG transmission flush every 24 to 30,000 miles or 2 years. BG makes the best transmission flush machine I've ever tested. It renews all of the fluid in your transmission, not just a small part of it. The BG transmission flush machine is safe, too, because it uses the natural circulation of the transmission. Your transmission will work better and last longer. As with everything BG offers, this is a superior service. For more information, go to bgprod.com or bgfindashop.com. Don't fall victim to "it looks good, therefore it must be good." Like when thump bump you're tapped by another car at a traffic light or in a parking lot. You get out and look, and being a good person, yeah, right. You just don't want the hassle of calling the cops and your insurance company. Plus, you don't even see a scratch, so you let it go. That could be a minor to deadly mistake. What you see is purely cosmetic, but hidden behind the cosmetics are safety systems. Those hidden parts absorb and dissipate energy, and they may have been damaged in that tiny bump. The problem is that unless you have energy absorbers and crumple zones checked, they may not protect you if your car is hit again in the same spot. Most safety parts are one-time use, and that first minor bump may have used up a portion of their effectiveness. Then, in an actual accident, they're only partially effective. For instance, the energy absorber may transmit more of the crash energy into the car and the people in the car. That could mean the difference between no or minor injuries or something worse, especially for young or elderly passengers. Even in bumps that seem like a total non-issue, take a minute to exchange information, then have the safety parts behind the bumper checked. It might save a life.
This is Goss's Garage with Pat Goss. Call the show now at 844-885-4677. That's 844-885-GOSS. And now, Pat Goss.
This portion of Goss's Garage is brought to you by BG Products, and we have Lyndon Abell from Rommel Harley-Davidson in Annapolis here in the studio. Lyndon has been many years of guest appearances on Goss's Garage.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I've learned a lot, believe me.
As have I.
Well, I don't know about that, but...
That's true. And I listened to your radio show and looked at Motor Week years before I was a guest and have always learned things from you.
Well, thank you. Hey, we have a call here. Let's talk to Leslie. He's from Western Australia. Leslie, welcome to Goss's Garage.
Yes, thank you, Pat. I'm glad I got in time. Today's question, Pat, is about auto transmission flush on my Camry, which we've talked about before. They say that if you do a transmission flush, it's done a little volume at a time. And if you use a cleaning additive in the flush, then it doesn't get flushed out completely because of that little at a time process. So a little bit remains behind, and we don't get BG here. I get it done at the Toyota dealer, so presumably their flushing agent is compatible with the transmission fluid. How does
Leslie, all of them that I have encountered have been compatible and self-dissipating. In other words, they, over a very short period of time, you put the chemical in the transmission, it does its cleaning job, and whatever is left over evaporates over a period of a couple of days. So it's...
And then you have to top up the transmission fluid.
No. What's left is, maybe a quarter of a teaspoonful or something like that, and it just evaporates out, and you don't have to top it off, you don't have to do anything, and it doesn't hurt anything because it just goes away.
Yes, okay, very good, Pat. Now, in case I wanted to convert to a fully synthetic fluid from the normal stuff what we use, is it possible to get all the old stuff out and the new synthetic in, or will there be some dilution forever, or what goes on there?
Well, that's what a flush is. Now, if you're talking about a fluid exchange like a lot of the chain operations and quick lubes and places like that do, then you may have an issue. But if you get an actual flush,
I do dealer flushes. Yeah, no, I'm doing a dealer flush, man. I pay top dollar through the nose.
well, what you pay doesn't necessarily equate to what you get, and you got to be
dealer. Yeah.
you got to be careful with dealers because, you know, they're in this business to make money just like anybody else. And but if it is a true flush, one of the big advantages of a true flush is that it gets rid of all of the old fluid in the transmission. So if you want to change from conventional to synthetic, it's just a matter of the machine takes the old fluid out and it replaces it with the synthetic. Done deal, nothing that you have to do.
Yeah, the thing is, Pat, they have to do it a little at a time, so there's always that little bit of dilution, isn't there?
There isn't enough. Believe me, I've been doing this for a lot of years now, and there isn't any little bit at a time or anything like that. It is just flush it out, put the new product in, done. That's all there is to it.
Okay, because the first time I did it, they charged me for 11 liters of fluid, and the second time I done it, they charged me 7 liters of fluid. So,
well, obviously they're not doing a flush. Obviously, what they're doing, by the sounds of that, is they're draining the pan and topping it off.
No, they flush it through. That's why it was 11 liters.
I certainly don't want to argue with you because you know what they're doing and I don't. But what they're doing is wrong. Any way you want to cut it, whatever label you want to put on it, it is wrong. That is not the way you do it. A flush is going to take an average of 18 quarts of fluid. So that's what a flush is it's two chemicals and roughly, in most cases, 18 quarts of fluid to flush a transmission.
Okay. Okay, I'll follow that up with Toyota. Thank you.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. Western, we get stuff from all over the world.
Yeah, the other side of the world.
Yeah, I just had some stuff from a gentleman in Ukraine that listens to the show and wanted to, he emailed me and so on. So
probably worth noting for Leslie that if he's switching over to a different fluid, to make sure that that's a compatible and approved fluid.
Yeah.
That nobody's looking for snake oil here.
Right.
Make sure it's properly approved for your vehicle by that vehicle's manufacturer, not the oil company.
Exactly. Yes. Good point. And but you know, we transfer or change cars over to synthetic. As a matter of fact, we hardly use any conventional fluid anymore. Most people want to step up to the better protection of the synthetics.
Yeah.
And,
cars are expensive. Why not protect it?
Yeah, for sure. And that holds true with motorcycles too. Use the proper fluids and so on. We were talking during the break about brake fluid.
Yeah. So the frustration that you and I were discussing was on my part when Harley-Davidson switched over to .4 fluid, which they did a piece at a time starting in the early 2000s. I think actually the first model was a Sportster, which was strange. But ultimately, I think it was driven by a desire to, you know, a need to have anti-lock brakes at some point, and the .5 isn't compatible. It's a little too compressible. It has other benefits, but the .4 was really going to be required moving forward, so they slowly but surely switched over to that. But they did not have a specified time to change the fluid, and as you and I have discussed many times, .4 absorbs water. It does it pretty effectively. It's an excellent water sponge.
Yeah.
And after 2 years, it's probably going to fail a test. Maximum allowable moisture content should be up, you know, if it's 4% or more, it fails. So but they did not have a specified time to change the fluid, which they now do, but they went probably 5 or 8 years without doing that. And recently have, just last week, sent a letter to, or communications, I'm not sure how it was communicated, to owners stating that if they have DOT4 brake fluid, they should change it every 2 years, and that if they have an anti-lock system and they don't change it every 2 years, it could be an expensive problem for them, and go change your brake fluid. So this was welcome for all of us in service departments, because we have over the years fought certain battles where we say, hey, it's been 5 years, since you owned the bike, have you ever changed the brake fluid? And they go, why would I do that? It's a sealed system. And of course, it may attempt to seal, but it's obviously not a completely sealed system. Very few things are completely sealed.
Well, one of the things that I've seen some studies on is that the seals around the pistons in the calipers and stuff like that can actually let a certain amount of moisture pass through them at a microscopic level.
Sure, and grit and other things.
Yeah.
Not just water. The water takes in dirt and other contaminants that can corrode and ruin your caliper. Brake fluid, I realize that the labor to change it is more expensive, but a bottle of brake fluid is about $12, and a caliper is about $3.50.
Yeah. So, like with us, I think typically a lot of the cars that we flush the brake fluid on are going to be right around $100. And you look at one caliper on one of these upgraded systems and so on, $300 to $700. An ABS module, $1,000 to $4,000.
Yeah.
And these ABS modules, and we had one.
You can't fix them for us. It's if it's a problem, it goes in the trash can. You got to put a new one on.
Right.
Yep.
Well, George in the other room there, in the control room, he would tell you what his ABS module looked like when we pulled it out of his vehicle.
A little grimy.
A little grimy, yeah.
And it's supposed to actually be brake fluid, not motor oil in there.
Right. It was, ugh, it was nasty.
Yeah.
So,
well, as I'm sure is no surprise to you, we see a lot of nasty brake fluid, and when it looks nasty at the master cylinder, just imagine what it looks like in the caliper. That's the best looking part of the brake fluid, is that stuff in the master cylinder.
Oh yeah.
When it's looking bad,
yeah, it's gotta go.
Yeah.
All right.
And then really, if you're doing that with a brake pad change, we like to get the pistons out of the caliper so we can clean those things off, push them back in, push them out again, clean them off again to get some of that residual grit that has worked its way past the seals and the pistons out of the caliper. So we have, the cleaner that fluid is, the less contaminant that's inside the caliper, the longer that fluid is going to last, and the less corrosion is going to be caused in your caliper.
It's surprising how much crap builds up in the bottom of a caliper.
Yeah, and some of that's probably the seal too, right?
Right.
Just, the rubber degrading itself, but some of that is coming in from the out of doors.
Yeah, and you just wouldn't normally believe that there could be that much stuff in there.
Yeah, and also the pistons typically work one way, but as soon as you go to change your pads, or if you have to take the caliper off for some other reason, you're spreading the pads apart, and what does that do? Pushes the piston back in. It carries a little schmutz with it, just the way it is.
So, all right, what kind of events do you have coming up at, other than the Antique Bike Show?
Well, that's the big one. We should mention that again. The Nighthawks are playing. We'll probably have 40 or more antique motorcycles, and our Porsche dealership next door, not ours, but our neighbor, is going to have some classic Porsches. We had some, I think 50, we had a 50 Speedster last year, and a couple of Target tops.
Porsches.
Yeah, good looking car. There was a rally car that still had all the rally gear on it, which looked
That's got to be
cool.
kind of interesting.
It was very interesting. Still had the numbers on the doors and a big tire you know, on the rack on top of the, you know, the motor cover. You know, very utilitarian looking Porsche, not what we're used to seeing today.
Yeah,
But that was
and,
from the 60s.
You know, that's back in the day when those cars were built to be a
Raced.
driving machine.
Yeah.
Not just balls to the wall, high performance, because they weren't that fast.
No,
But they were great driving cars.
They were light.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were light, and they were raced a lot. So that's Saturday, June 24th, and it'll be a good time if you appreciate some old stuff, and if you want to A/B the old stuff and the new stuff. You know, great time to come out and check that. Of course, for new stuff, the Harley-Davidson's touring motorcycles came out with a brand new motor last year, which we've talked about before. The Milwaukee 8 motor is really revolutionary, and as a matter of fact, at 1 o'clock today, we'll be doing a seminar at Rommel Harley-Davidson in Annapolis about the new Milwaukee 8 motor. So
Is that full?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure.
If you'd like
But
to
they
go,
can call.
we could probably squeeze another chair in the room. Come on in.
Okay.
Yeah, give us a call or just stop by. But we would prefer to have you sign up ahead of time so we know how many people are coming.
What's the number?
410-263-3345.
Okay. And online?
RommelHD.com.
Okay. Lyndon, looks like that clock on the wall is telling us that we have just about done it. And,
Again?
Yeah, again. So we need to get on out of here. I want to thank you. And,
Thank you.
One more time, the website and phone number.
RommelHD.com, and phone number is 410-263-3345, or just stop by and see us on 30 Hudson Street in Annapolis, Maryland.
All right, folks. Thank you for listening. Of course, thanks to Lyndon Abell, and thanks to Steve McMillan, George Stockton, and Kayla Avant for producing today's show. For everyone here at Goss's Garage, I'm Pat Goss. Until next time, drive gently. We'll see ya.